Welcome to the Clean Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Madeline. Life is messy, but it shouldn't be toxic. Whether that's chemicals, relationships, habits, or old ways of thinking, the Clean Bee Podcast is here to help you cut through the noise and release what is no longer serving you. Let's dive in, beautiful. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Clean Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Madeline, and if you are new here, welcome. If you are an OG listener, welcome back. Either way, I'm so happy that you landed on this podcast. I don't believe that it was a mistake. I believe the universe is always guiding us and supporting us, and I feel honored to be a part of your day and a part of your journey. So whether you are in the car driving to work, you're cleaning your house, running errands, or maybe you're working out, wherever it is that you find me in your ears today, I am beyond grateful and honored. This show covers all the things. We dive into spirituality, we dive into mindset, motivation, as well as physical health. Now, I really got started in my own holistic health journey in 2013, which I dived into my background and my story in episode 1 of the podcast. So if you haven't listened to that episode and you are curious to hear my backstory, I would definitely recommend to go and check that one out. But really that was how I started. And it's really what, if I think about it at my core, what lights me up, it really is physical health and wellness. I am so fascinated by all of the ways that we can positively support our body. So whether that looks like removing the toxic chemicals like PEG and BPA, or if it is the natural flavors or the fragrances that are loaded in so many of our consumer goods and products, or if it looks like what we can introduce or incorporate into our diet and lifestyle and being that supports us. So maybe that's delicious, fiber-rich foods that feed and support our healthy gut microbiome. Or maybe it's certain supplements, or it's a certain protocol that we can give a try to support us. I truly believe that that is the foundation of living a vibrant life. We cannot live vibrantly if we are feeling tired and fatigued and worn out and we have brain fog, if we're overrun with rashes or allergies, or we're experiencing incontinence, or all of these other things that, sadly are becoming more and more common. And that's not a conversation for today's episode of, why I think that's happening, but I'm really just wanting to highlight the fact that when we choose to actively support and nurture and care for our body and our vessel, we are setting up such a solid foundation to really go up that vibrational scale. And it's from there that we can feel the passion and the drive to follow our dreams and explore new hobbies and, finally quit the job that we hate, or start the podcast of our own, or go on the adventure we've always dreamed of. It's really just so much more difficult to do those things that light us up when we don't feel good at our core. So that's really my mission, and that's what I'm passionate about, as you can maybe tell from my exuberance that I'm hopefully able to, convey through this microphone to you today. But that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I'm really hoping to get across to you in every episode, but specifically in today's episode as well. So today's episode is a solo-sode, which if you are an avid listener, you'll know that that is what I like to call my solo episodes, where it's just me and my little old mic here broadcasting from my bedroom at my little corner with my desk. And it's really where I like to kind of bring things to the table, bring things to the conversation and to your ears that are on my heart, for lack of a better word. This is a conversation and something that I've been wanting to share for a long time. And I'm really I'm feeling so called, and I'm feeling like it's now or never. And I feel like because of the sort of incessant fear that we're being inundated with, which is a lot of what this episode is going to be about today, I really wanted to create something where I can share with you facts and then also share with you tactical tips that you can take away. So it is never my intention to provide information that could be a little bit off-putting without providing a sort of antidote for that or some sort of tool. I never just want to leave you guys hanging. I never want to say, oh my gosh, this thing is the worst. The end, right? I always want to share with you, okay, this chemical has been shown to produce X and X side effects, and here's what you can do instead, or here's what you can swap it out with, or you get the idea, right? So that was really my goal with today's episode. So in the first half of the episode, I'm going to be sharing with you some facts and quotes from different studies and articles that have been published in regards to the fear-based news cycle and how that impacts our health. And then the second half of the episode, I'm going to be sharing with you a brilliant clip that was never before released from an episode that I did with Naturopathic Dr. Morgan Monsanto. So in that portion of the episode, she shares some powerful tips and tools that you can use to then support your immune system and support your body. So I hope you give the entire episode a listen so that you can really walk away with some actionable items to put into your tool belt to support your body and your overall vitality. So as always, Clean Bee fam, take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't. If you're new here, you'll hear me say that in every episode because I really, truly, fully believe it. So if you do enjoy listening to this episode, I'd be honored if you would rate 5 stars and leave a review. It helps the algorithm promote the show to other listeners that may find it entertaining or may benefit from listening to it. So without further ado, Clean Bees, let's go ahead and dive into today's solo-sode. I'll see you on the other side. Lots of love, guys. So there is just so much fear going on, and there has been really since February, March of 2020. There's been this really incessant, persistent, constant, chronic, underlying feeling and sense of fear in the collective. And in many ways, rightfully so, right? There's been a lot of unknown and there's been a lot of changes and just so much going on that it's very normal for us to be having this feeling of fear. But what I really want to highlight and share with you today is how fear is not serving you in the ways that we are being told. Turn on any mainstream news network these days, and not even these days, for the past year and a half, 2 years now almost, and there's this like countdown ticker of how many people are dying. And what a horrific image, right? When we really think about it. And it's something that has really rubbed me the wrong way since this whole pandemic began. And like many people, I was kind of glued to the news in those early months in 2020. I was confused. I was wanting to stay up to date. I wanted to know what was going on. And the more that I tuned in, I was realizing that the shittier and worse that I would feel in my body. And so I was, really came back to my roots, came back to myself and my own intuition. And I remembered something that I learned in school. So for those of you who don't know, my background is multimedia journalism and production. So I went to school really thinking that I was going to be a journalist or I wanted to travel the world and make documentaries, which that's definitely still on the list. But anyway, I digress. So I remember in my sophomore year of college, we learned this phrase, or this saying rather, that I will never forget, and it's stuck with me ever since. If it bleeds, it leads. And it's a very simple term, and I'm sure most of you listening have probably heard of it. And it essentially means that, if it's dramatic or scary or fear-based or bleeding, for lack of a better word, it leads. It leads the top of the paper. It's the top of the news site. It's going to get the most clicks. Now, when we think about how this model and this system works, these news organizations, which are predominantly more and more online based and less in our local communities, which is a whole nother conversation for another day, it's very sad that the smaller news organizations within small towns and communities have not been able to keep up because of all of these changes. But anyway, so because these organizations are paid for and essentially ran by advertisers, it's important that they get clicks. Now, I get it. Like, I fully understand that. With a marketing background, it makes sense, and it's important to get advertising dollars and get sponsorships. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to easily see that, to get the higher spending advert dollars, you have to be producing a certain type of ROI, or return on investment. And a lot of times those numbers are how many clicks, or how many website hits have you gotten, or how many times has this been retweeted or shared, or this, that, and the other, right? So in order to draw us in with our very human amygdala, very lizard brain aspect part of our body and our mind, we are drawn in to those types of headlines and those types of leads. Again, if it bleeds, it leads. So it's not really hard to put all the puzzle pieces together and see that, when there's drama, when there is fear, it is going to be pushed out in the news cycle, because that is ultimately what is going to pay for the bottom line. That is what is going to get the organization the most clicks, which is going to make them the most money, which is at the end of the day what any company or business wants, which no fault of their own. That's the model, right? But when we are able to sort of take a step back from that and really just look at it with a neutral perspective of not is something good nor bad, but just recognizing it for what it is, you're able to take a little bit of the charge out of it, and you're able to see it for what it is. And then you're able to discern and make decisions from, I think, a lot more clear-headed and level space. So this is ultimately why I personally have decided to stop watching the news. And I mean, I didn't really watch the news that much pre-COVID, but I did spend, again, a big chunk of time for those few months, middle of 2020, where I was kind of addicted to the news. Now, the reason that I'm sharing this is because this perpetual chronic fear cycle that is being portrayed to us in the news is really creating that underlying chronic sense of anxiety and fear and sort of doom and gloom, for lack of a better word. Now, I'm not saying to put your head under a rock and not pay attention to what is going on. I'm not saying that by any means. But what I am saying is that it is often a very healthy choice to take a break or remove yourself from the 24/7 fear-based news cycle. And I'm going to share with you why. Now, there are so many studies that are coming out and showing how fear and stress and anxiety, to name a few, significantly weaken our immune system. Now, we all have been living in the pandemic. We know what 2020 and now what all of 2021 was like. And I think everyone can collectively agree, no matter what your opinions are on pretty much anything else, we can probably all agree that supporting your body and supporting your immune system is paramount in these times. Which is why I find it so interesting that essentially the chronic perpetual fear-based news is this sort of feedback loop that is continuously feeding fear, which is suppressing the immune system, which is the exact opposite of what we all need right now. So let me share a few studies and facts with you. So this is a quote from the University of Minnesota's website, and it says, "Impact of chronic fear. Living under a constant threat has serious health consequences." And the first one being physical health. Fear weakens our immune system and can cause cardiovascular damage, GI problems such as ulcers and irritable bowel syndrome, and decreased fertility. It can also lead to accelerated aging and even premature death. So I just wanted to share that as a sort of overview, and then I'll dive in a little deeper with this next study that I'm going to quote. Now, this study is from a PubMed article, which is an awesome database that I use for a lot of my own research, and anytime I'm curious about a topic, I really like to start there. So the title is "Prevalence of Stress, Anxiety, Depression Among the General Population During the COVID-19 Pandemic, a Systematic Review and meta-analysis. So this quote says, recent evidence suggests that people who are kept in isolation experience significant levels of anxiety, anger, confusion, and stress. At large, all of the studies that have examined the psychological disorders during the COVID-19 pandemic have reported that the affected individuals show severe symptoms of mental trauma, such as emotional distress, depression, stress, mood swings, irritability, insomnia, ADHD, PTSD, and anger. Research has also shown that frequent media exposure may cause distress. Nevertheless, in the current situation, it is challenging to accurately predict the psychological and emotional consequences of the pandemic. Studies conducted in China, which was the first country that affected this by the virus spread, as we all know, show that people's fear of the unknown nature of the virus has led to mental disorders. End quote. So I'm not here to, again, express really any opinion. I don't really care to share my opinion. What I do care to do is just highlight the fact and making this connection for you between the sort of chronic media exposure, the sort of chronic fear cycle, and how that really, really impacts our physical well-being and particularly our immune system health. Now, this last quote that I'm going to share with you is actually directly from the CDC website. It's a study that was done really recently, really examining the underlying medical conditions and severe illness among 500,000 plus adults who were hospitalized with the virus. So this quote, which I'm going to share with you in just a moment, just so that it's not taken out of context, they're essentially listing different comorbidities or things that will essentially increase your risk of having a severe reaction. So they list a host of different things, which I'm not going to go into, but I'm going to go into the second one that they listed. So the quote is, anxiety and fear-related disorders were a prevalent condition in our sample. They were also the second highest risk factor for death among the underlying conditions considered in our study. The reasons for this finding are likely multifactorial and may include a reduced ability to prevent infection among patients with anxiety disorders, immunomodulatory and/or cardiovascular effects of medications used to treat these disorders, and/or severe illness exacerbating anxiety disorders. So there you have it from the CDC website. The second highest risk factor in having a severe reaction, in their own words, is a pre-existing condition of having anxiety or fear-related disorders. So I'm sharing all of these quotes, all of these facts, all of these studies with you to really just paint a picture and a story, hopefully in a succinct way, so that it becomes very clear that there is a really unhealthy relationship here between our addiction to the media and the news, and then our incessant consumption of that, and then those sort of subsequent repercussions that suppress our immune system in a time when it is critical for that to be in tip-top shape. So I say all of this and I paint this picture just to show you the facts, essentially. So take what you will from that, but what I personally have taken from all of that information, what I've already known for many years, what I've already known intuitively, was that consuming the news regularly for my own self, in my own personal experience, has not been something that I deem healthy for my own personal self. Disengaging with the sort of incessant 24/7 fear-based news cycle has actually been one of the most beneficial things to my mental health. But I also, and as the studies have shown that I've reported and shared with you today, it also has likely impacted in a positive way my physical health. Now, it doesn't mean living under a rock. It doesn't mean not paying attention. It doesn't mean ignoring what's going on in the real world. I can promise you that that is almost impossible to happen with how connected we all are in all other ways. So you will know what's going on. And I'm speaking from experience. It's just not subscribing to the constant fear. So now, to shift a little bit in the rest of this episode, I want to share with you a snippet of a conversation that I had earlier this year with Naturopathic Dr. Monsanto. So her and I had a conversation that was amazing. And it was released previously, episode 13, which I will be sure to include in the show notes. And in that episode, I really wanted to highlight and talk about our body's natural detox pathways and really showcase, the sort of low tox living, which you guys know if you're a fan of the Clean Bee, I am all about that life. So that was really the theme of that episode. But there was a lot of other really important and valuable information that I left out really just for the sake of time because the episode was already so long. And I knew that I was going to share this. I just wasn't sure when. So, as the universe would have it, I really felt like now was the perfect time to share this information with all of you because Morgan is a wealth of knowledge and she really shares and dials into some practical and tactable and tangible ways that you can really use to support your body and, of course, thus your immune system. So, give the rest of this conversation a listen. And if you haven't already, I definitely recommend listening to the full episode that I again already highlighted with her. It was episode number 13. So, here are Dr. Morgan Monsanto's tips on how to support your immune system.
Well, so I would say that the most fundamental free thing that you can do for your immune system is get adequate sleep. It really, really makes a difference. I mean, if you think about when you feel under the weather, when you feel sick, your body shuts you down. It makes you go to sleep because that's when it heals and that's when it recovers. And so, this isn't going to be the right thing. It's not going to be the easy thing for everybody, right? Because some people are working 2 jobs or some people are raising a family and X, Y, and Z, and maybe the 6 hours is all they can get a night. But the goal would really, truly be 8 hours of sleep. So that is sleep. Number one, immune support, in my opinion, not knowing anybody in particular, right, in specific, is sleep. Adequate hydration with good, clean water. Adequate protein intake with good sources of protein. And then minimal packaged and processed foods. These are kind of the big foundations of supporting your immune system. And you might say, like, why does what I eat affect my immune system? And it goes back to that toxic burden conversation about how the more weight we put in our body, the more toxins we put into process, the less freedom our immune system has to function on patrol and doing what it should be doing to keep us healthy. Toxic foods, they impact the gut lining and the gut's ability to digest and absorb and assimilate nutrients. So the very first thing, that the first step is what we put in our mouth that's good for us, things like maybe supplements and stuff like that, which I can also touch on. But also, what do we put in our mouth that's bad for us that we can stop? And in terms of like the conversation around supplements and what are some immune supportive protocols or options out there, there's quite a few. In the herbal category, probably one of my favorites is astragalus. This isn't right for everybody for all the time, but it is a pretty awesome immune supportive herb. The more acute, like if you're actually getting sick, herbs so astragalus is like immune support, and then the acute treatments are, of course, I think pretty well known. Echinacea, elderberry, Oregon grape is a good one. Some of these you can find pretty easily over the counter in like acute care kind of herbal formulas. There's quite a few. They're all going to be kind of specific to what you're experiencing, but that, and then the other one that you can take kind of more for a maintenance are medicinal mushrooms, like reishi, maitake, cordyceps. Oh my gosh, lion's mane, turkey tail. These things are all so freaking cool. Mushrooms are so awesome. I did not appreciate them until the last probably 5 or 6 years. Did you know? Did you know that they actually they breathe, that's not the right word, but they use oxygen and then expel carbon dioxide. So they're more close to humans than plants.
Yes, I am equally obsessed with mushrooms and their mycelium and their cool like
Yes.
interconnectedness under the
Mm-hmm.
earth and I mean, they
A
are
massive role they
totally
play.
not getting enough credit.
I
Well, they're
know.
starting to. They're
Slowly,
starting to.
slowly. Yes, yes. Okay, so those are some of the plants and herbs. And then the vitamins that are immune supportive, I think everybody's probably heard these over the last year, the vitamin C and the zinc. When you're taking zinc, you do have to be a little bit cautious though, because you don't want to take so much that you upset your zinc to copper ratio in your body.
Yes.
Vitamin D is another one that you can overdo. So you want to get your blood checked to make sure that you're not overdoing it. I've heard podcasts where people say, "Oh, I take 10,000 units of vitamin D every day," and you can literally put yourself in vitamin D toxicity. So it is not something you need to do flippantly for a long time. That is definitely something that I recommend getting checked, your levels checked before you go ham on vitamin D. Let's see, quercetin and bromelain are excellent, all of your bioflavonoids. And then some of my absolute favorites are glutathione and NAC.
Yes. Ooh,
Yeah.
yes.
Glutathione is it's an antioxidant in our body. It consists of 3 different amino acids, and our liver makes it. Every single cell uses it. It's called the body's master antioxidant,
Yes.
and it's depleted by almost everything. It's depleted by Tylenol and alcohol. It's depleted by a lot of different drugs. It's depleted by pollution and toxicity. And when this runs out, for example, when this runs out with Tylenol, Tylenol is really, really toxic on the liver. The reason is because it flies through your glutathione. And then in order to make more glutathione, the liver actually breaks apart cells to get the amino acids, to make the glutathione, to detox from the Tylenol. So
Oh,
it is really hot. It is a really aggressive pathway. But in the antioxidant conversation, the reason it's important is because it is kind of like a cellular detoxifier. You know, the cells, they make ROS, and the glutathione really helps to come in. I mean, there's other antioxidants in the body, but this really helps to come in and quell that. When you have the free radicals, they kind of cause these biochemical imbalances and damage to the cells. So, you know, we think of a cell as like this microscopic thing that who cares what's going on in there, but it's really kind of like chemical warfare in a cell. It's like
yeah.
a factory mixed with chemical warfare, because everybody's fighting for nutrients and they're all trying to build their own processes and do their own thing. And that's the factory component. But then, you know, when they run out of something, they're going to try to get it from elsewhere, and they're going to, you know, be a little bit aggressive about it. So being really conscious of that. Now, glutathione is also immune modulatory and inflammation modulatory. So it's proven to kind of quell these inflammatory pathways and these cytokine storms. This
Yes.
is kind of like, yeah, maybe a little bit sciencey for this conversation, but
Oh, I'm obsessed. Keep going.
but glutathione has been found to really come in and calm down pretty exaggerated immune responses in the body.
Mm,
This has been really important for certain diseases, and treating and kind of even preventing different diseases. Glutathione is pretty, you know, of course, we use it a lot in the liver. We use it a lot in the lungs as well. As you can imagine, like the lung interface with the air, there's a lot of potential for toxins and stuff. So there's, you know, the body really works to keep things balanced there. Now, the reason I brought up NAC is because that is a one of the amino acids that's in glutathione. It's N-acetylcysteine is what that
yes.
stands for. And cysteine tends to be the rate limiting amino acid when we're producing glutathione. So you can take NAC and help your body replenish its glutathione faster. And the research shows that oral glutathione is really not absorbed well unless you have it in liposomal form. And then the research is still kind of coming out as to like how good that is. It's pretty promising though. But when you take oral NAC, you actually have a pretty good change in your blood's glutathione levels. Um, so there's, you know, we definitely see a change with that. Immune support can be really broad. Um, and and of course, it's actually a much bigger conversation than the things that we just touched on. But I think those are really good starting points. I mean, being just on some basic supplements, some basic vitamins will do your body good.
You know, our body is always sending us signals, and it's our job to kind of tune into those signals and
Mm-hmm.
understand what it is that they mean and getting to the root cause of it. So I think everything that you provided today was just so beneficial and also in such an easy to digest way. So I appreciate that. And I also just wanted to touch on as well, because I love that there was no real dogma of, promoting a specific diet or you have to do this to be healthy. I think there's just so much of that, especially on social media. There's just, you have to be keto, you have to be vegan, you have to do a 16-hour fast. It's, you know, every person is unique and individual, and what works for one won't work for someone else. But when
Exactly.
you break it down to some really, really simple bits, I think we can all agree that, processed food is just no good. So if you can just even reduce that, don't get hung up as a listener on, I have to, be this type of diet now, and this is going to be my silver bullet. And it's, how about just focus on your sleep, quality water, stress management, and stop eating stuff that comes in a plastic bag?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, we talked about fad diets a little bit before the podcast, and how there is so much of this social media drive and support for them. And I'll tell you that I've seen diets work amazingly for one person and terribly for another person. And I mean, across the board, all the different diets. Um, so it's very individualized, but you are completely right. There are some clear principles that apply to everybody. Being conscious of all little pathways that are just kind of adding up, and just working towards balancing them. And it might not be overnight either. Forgive yourself, have compassion, understand that getting to the place where you're at right now took years, and that completely changing your lifestyle might take a while as well.
And there you have it, Dr. Morgan Monsanto's top tips for helping you support your body and your immune system. If you made it this far into the episode, I hope you have enjoyed. Be sure to check out the show notes, because I am going to be linking not only Dr. Morgan Monsanto's contact info so that you can connect with her, but I'm also going to be linking all of the studies that I referenced today. Because as always, you guys know how I feel. I really want to make sure that you feel empowered and providing you with the tools so that you can continue your own investigations. So I want to make sure that I provide those resources for you. And I'll also be linking up some of my favorite brands of the supplement recommendations that Dr. Morgan Monsanto shared. So for all of those that are really looking to step into their power and take charge of their health, check out the show notes for all of the information that you could need. So that's it for this week, Clean Bees. I love and appreciate you guys so much. And I cannot wait to see you next week at the next episode. So stay healthy, stay well, and stay vibrant, you guys. And I'll see you next week.